And welcome in to another episode of Too Many Points on the Tell Me More podcast. I'm your host, Mac Moore, here again with Justin Pemberton. How's it going, Justin?
Mac, it's going pretty well, and happy New Year to you. And I can't express how happy I am that 2020 is about to be put to rest forever. Because I think we've all needed a fresh new start. Because this has been a rough year. Minus our beloved Chiefs winning it all. That's kind of the highlight of this year. But looking forward to a whole new year. And of course, we got some bowl games. Of course, you and I were talking about the Oklahoma route last night, which was awesome to watch. Go Big 12 and SEC. To heck with you and your cockiness. No, seriously. I mean, Florida was really being all cocky and everything, before the bowl game. Now they're going to be Oklahoma. They're better than OU, and then this and this and this. And well, it kind of backfired. But anyway, good to be on, and I'm looking forward to talking nothing but football.
Well, there's going to be some NBA on the end. It's not nothing but football. We're going to have a little bit more, but
I've watched a little NBA, so I could.
Yeah, we won't go too deep. We're gonna get started. Early takeaways and it's been a very strange start to the NBA season with getting the kickoff right at Christmas, just a couple games before, so they, I guess, be prepared. But nobody is prepared for the start of the season. Not even the teams that actually did make it into the playoffs. Definitely not the teams who haven't played basketball in 8 months. Yeah, I think interesting the lopsided results we saw the first week, and just kind of seeing what these teams look like, because there was mass movement of rebuilding rosters to get themselves ready for such a quick turnaround after they did the bubble so late into the year. But I'm definitely interested in that, but we will focus mostly on NFL. We'll start to have more NBA topics once we actually complete the NFL season. That's like the slow transition that by sometime in February, we'll have full-on conversations about NBA. But for now, you brought up the getting out of 2020. I don't have a lot of faith that 2021 is going to be better. There's not a lot of signs that things that were wrong now are going to be fixed. But like you mentioned Chiefs being the highlight. My dad always told me that Chiefs wouldn't win a Super Bowl until hell froze over. So sure enough, that's what happened in the beginning of 2020. We had a couple months of close to normal, and Chiefs win it all. Couldn't believe it, and society breaks down. So who could have guessed that? But yep. we did still have, sports got, back on track enough. We had what is now a full NFL season. It looked a little dicey at times and still looks dicey. One of the playoff teams we'll end up talking about, or possible playoff teams, the Browns, going into week 17, needing to win, and facility shut down and lost this last week with 0 wide receivers. And it definitely is not made it through unscathed, but is still surprising we've gotten to the end here. So, as we start to break down the final action, the one thing we know consistently will happen, the one thing that I'll always be right about, and 2020 can't take it away from me, is just never bet on Kirk Cousins. Doesn't matter what the line starts out as, don't do it. And it's made me a lot of money this year. It paid off again this last week with the Saints and Vikings being the only Friday game, and the Saints win 52-33. Just a utter massacre. Alvin Kamara ends up getting 6 touchdowns. Could have been 7. There was a freebie that goes to Taysom Hill. He said he likes to spread it around, which I think I love when you get 6 of 7 touchdowns. Like, yeah, we like to spread it around here. Like, that's, first of all, hilarious. But like the record that he tied, I like at this point I don't even remember. Is it like Ernie Nevers of like the Bears in like 1931? Some of that information may be wrong. Too. But I remember reading it and just being like, are you kidding me right now? Like, he's tying a rushing record from back when you couldn't pass the ball forward. So, crazy.
And the guy gave me, 52.6 fantasy points? I mean, the only other breakout I had in another league, which I believe was on NFL.com, was Tyreek Hill's big game against
I had that as well.
The Buccaneers. 70 fantasy points. I mean, which end up being top 5 all time in fantasy, or no, 6th all time, because Jerry Rice has the all time best performance as far as fantasy points.
Wasn't that the strike? Like coming back from the strike? Wasn't that the huge game he had?
No, I think it was 94. I think it was their year and they won it all. I think.
Isn't that the strike year? Isn't that like after the strike?
No, that was you're thinking of 80, either 81 or
no, I'm thinking of a 90s one that was
no 83. I'm trying to remember. I don't.
We'll Google it later. Google it later. The point is, Jerry Rice owns everything. Like
right.
Jerry Rice has just straight up, like we've had this. I think it was like Randy Moss and Terrell Owens that they're like arguing over who's the best wide receiver, and you're like, even if we're talking about like peak performance, Jerry Rice like is just now barely like. I used to make this joke that it was like he's an entire Anquan Bolden career ahead of the second guy. Larry Fitzgerald is starting to cut into that, so I have to keep moving down the list, and it's usually some random wide receiver. It's not as cool of a name, but imagine that. For like 3 years, I just kept saying Jerry Rice is an Anquan Bolden better than the next best wide receiver career. Like, he did it in an era where it was less passing. Like, there, just stop. Mm-hmm. There's no argument. There's none. There's zero. There is a lot for quarterback. There's a lot for right there. You can go every other position. Wide receiver is the only one that Jerry Rice has utterly locked down. And I can't even imagine the type of career it would take to one-up him. Like, we've not seen it, and we probably won't see it. And even if you did, like, the numbers would have to be so staggering because you then have to weigh in the fact that we're in this passing era where every quarterback record's being broken. Like, there should be a wide receiver that can catch up. And even if they do, it won't mean as much as when Jerry Rice did it.
So the guy you had to go back to before Rice, who had the all-time, I think, record for, was it receiving yards, I think, was Steve Largent, the former Seahawks star. I mean, he was the, quote, GOAT at receiver before Jerry Rice became that. So, and ever since then, I mean, it's just you just nailed it on the head, man. He's the ultimate GOAT, and yeah, we've had many really good ones, come through. Moss, Owens, Fitzgerald, and etc. But none of them can match what Jerry Rice did. He is the ultimate GOAT at that position.
Yeah, there's nobody who's going to catch up, but you see those type of stats, and you're just staggered by it. And in Alvin Kamara's case, like, he could have one of those all-time type careers. I mean, he's built to be a modern running back. When we talk about like running backs not having value, well, you have more value when you
They have massive value. They have massive value. When you can use a running back to come out of the backfield in the passing game, I mean, people don't realize how valuable that is. I mean,
it's valuable, but like, you're not more valuable than another running back because there are a lot of guys who can be, replacement level running and catch the ball out of the backfield. And even when you're elite, a lot of it is more like draft value, but then it's also when you pay them too much, like the difference between the top running back and like the 20th running back is generally nothing. And so that's the value. It's not that they're not important in a football game. It's that no guy is more important than another guy. Alvin Kamara is one of the few that kind of transcends that. And we do have a new guest joining real fast. Nick Adams, first time he's come on to one of my sports pods, and I think ever, but maybe just a long time. But Nick, we were just talking about Alvin Kamara and his 6 touchdown performance. That's a good time to jump in. What did you think of that? Did you get to watch Alvin Kamara just casually rattle off 6 and have Taysom Hill stop him from getting the record of all time?
Well, it's definitely one of those games that, frustrates you if you're going against him in a fantasy league. And the kind of game that you really just want to blow your brains out sometimes.
Oh, so we got the opposite here. Justin was just talking about having Alvin Kamara. Now we got the guy who lost Alvin Kamara. This is good balance.
But it was a running thing for a lot of the season. He's such a good receiving back, and you get so many extra points that way throughout the season. So it wasn't like, it was an anomaly in that it was 6 touchdowns, but it wasn't an anomaly in that he was just wrecking people's shit.
Well, plus you're facing a terrible Vikings defense that lost a lot of people, last off season, and it's just been a tough year for Minnesota, and there's gonna probably be some changes maybe on that side of the ball. Okay, not maybe, there is going to be, and possibly a new head coach. Maybe. I don't know about the whole situation with Zimmer, but you would think things are going to start to kind of change at that area too. So it's really no surprise to see Alvin Kamara and the Saints, just absolutely explode on the Vikings at all.
Yeah, and I don't even have Zimmer high on my list of like coaches that need to be fired, but
but you never know.
It's within the realm of possibility. I think in all actuality, the number one problem and the one that they can't really get past right now, it's just Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins swindled them with the contract, and he's just not very good at football. And it's going to be a long time before the Vikings can get over that because they have all the other players in position. They have a running back like Dalvin Cook who can match a similar style to Kamara. And they have Justin Jefferson even comes in to replace Stephon Diggs. So the fact that you could avoid that big of a loss and still not like improve from it it's a sign that the quarterback position, which is the most important in football, is not working for the Vikings. And you got to fix that before you do anything else.
And can I just pass along the fact that Jefferson passed Randy Moss for like the most receiving yards by a Vikings rookie receiver? Like, you kidding me?
Stuff.
You kidding me? It's insane.
Like and the idea is like that's a great season. I remember like when Randy Moss does it, he gets the Vikings to 15-1. Him and Chris Carter just dominating the league. And then you look at this year, Vikings mean nothing.
Oh yeah, and I think maybe that's the nature of how much passing has changed in 20 years. Because when Randy Moss is doing it, the kids on the schoolyard are saying, Randy Moss, catching it. I don't know what many kids are saying Jefferson. Maybe they are.
No, they're saying Moss. They're still just saying Moss. Like, you're getting mossed. Now we've turned it into an adjective that
and the latest to be mossed is Mahomes. You see that, and then you see the Mahomes comment saying, "Oh, I won't be surprised if Moss puts me on. You got Moss." Well, sure enough, Mahomes, you got Moss.
Is that why you got benched this upcoming?
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't finish off the fly route. So, just not good enough to be on an NFL football field. At some point we'll end up talking about the Chiefs and that game. And I was definitely surprised, even as somebody who has used the Falcons' resurgence late in the year to help me on some bets. I did not expect a game that the Falcons would keep up with the Chiefs. Would be as defensive focused as that game. So definitely a lot of things to talk about with that one. Anything else for Vikings Saints before we start moving on? We got a lot of these games. I'm trying to think of which ones matter. Like, I normally wouldn't want to talk about Dolphins Raiders, but God, it's just been hilarious to watch the Raiders keep losing. And
it's magic, man.
Like, at this point, if what would your guys' decision be on quarterback if you are the Dolphins coach? Do you just play Fitzpatrick here on out? He's clearly your best option, and now you're actually in the playoffs. So this idea of getting reps for your future starter, now we need one that can win today. Or is it very clear that Fitzpatrick, when the pressure is on, does not look like Fitzmagic, and the best way to get the most out of him is to start Tua and yank him every game to throw in Fitzpatrick to take over and win you ball games here heading into the postseason?
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry. That's tough. That is so tough. But I think you're clearly seeing it's like 9 day with Tua and Fitzpatrick. When Fitz comes in, he's a little more productive. You're seeing more completed passes. You're seeing more yardage downfield, even when you're getting your head yanked off and you still complete a pass, that was insane. Okay, there's 19 seconds left. You're thinking that game was in the bag for the Raiders.
I never think that with the Raiders. Never.
Well, I guess I shouldn't either. And I will just say football is better when every single screw is loose in every single individual's head for the Raiders. It's better. It's perfect.
I'm not a fan of the logic of trying to get your future some reps. I think your future is your future, and you just got to make that decision later. I never thought they worked Aaron Rodgers in, when he was like, a rookie or in his first years, or same thing with Patrick Mahomes. They didn't work somebody in and transition into the future. At some point, you just cut it off and say, okay.
Counterpoint, Josh Allen. He did not throw 52% completion first year, 55 the next year, 57, something under 60. Now he is close to 70%. He is right there. His stats line up with Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. And if you try to work him in the way that other quarterbacks have for basically the history of football, like you basically bench him year one. You're done with it. Like you're like, this is not a guy who can play NFL football. All of our concerns, like that upside doesn't matter because he's not good enough to play. But instead, you decided that's the guy. We're going to figure out how to make it work. And we're just leaving him in there because we have faith that when we get to the other side, he will be the ceiling. He will be the greatest version of this player. And so they went with it. So your question is, it's like, do you think that's what Tua is going to be? Because we know what the greatest version of Fitzpatrick is. It's good enough to win you games against bad teams or surprise you against a couple good teams. But he's never going to string off 3 wins to get you to a Super Bowl. And if anything, he's just taking away those reps from Tua that can get you a guy who will be better and will be your future. So if you believe in Tua at all, you can't bench him for Fitzpatrick like long term. Like it's one thing to do it in a game. I thought the first time they benched him was to save him from himself because he was getting his head taken off because he kept going too far back and just had pass rushers murdering him. But now it's going to be a confidence issue. You're going to wreck this kid. And if you have any plans for him to be your guy of the future, you can't just run with Fitzpatrick throughout this year. Like you can't bench him for the playoff run.
Well, I mean, neither one of them would be the worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl. So could
Nick Foles,
Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson.
We just beat you. Like that was 3, man, real fast.
Yeah. So could Fitzpatrick lead the team to the Super Bowl? A Fitzpatrick type has done it before.
Yeah, they also had the best team, and they just didn't ruin it. That's not what the Dolphins are. As much as the Dolphins have been a fun story this year, that's not what's happening in Miami. So maybe it's just that magic, maybe it's a Joe Flacco type perfect run. But even this Dolphins team isn't even what the Ravens were when Flacco just had that stretch of finally being a real quarterback. So I once again, it's not that he would never be able to win, but he sure as hell is not the guy that's like, well, we got to go with him because he gives us the best chance of winning a Super Bowl. You are going to kill his confidence for a guy who's going to give you marginally better chance of winning 2 more games over the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so speaking of Fitzpatrick, it just came down that he tested positive.
I don't mean to laugh. I'm only laughing at the irony of the situation, not the medical side.
I got the text alert from the NFL app on my phone, and that's what it said. So Tua, you're gonna have to win on your own, bud. Because there's no
solve the problem
option
for us. And then that's why I'm laughing. Is we just had this conversation. Never mind. Doesn't even matter.
You can't go put the Dolphins mascot in there and go suit up and play. So it's all up to Tua.
Well, and we'll see how he plays when he doesn't have Fitzpatrick looking over his shoulder. Yep. I assume not any better, but whatever. We'll see what happens. He's had a very tough rookie year. Do we want to talk about the Buccaneers at all, other than when you beat the Lions that thoroughly? What have we learned from the Buccaneers? Have any of our opinions changed from a team that is clearly one of the better teams in the NFC, but also has just not had anything other than there are games where they beat bad teams thoroughly, and then against good teams, the only real thing they have on their record was taking down the Packers, which seemed to just be an anomaly. Everything else has been, okay, we know that offense is crazy good. We know there's a lot of pieces there. They have not had any sort of stretch that says this is going to be a team that is, I'm not sure they can beat the Saints with whatever weird quarterback situation the Saints are stuck in, let alone beat what the Packers are right now. So when you look at that type of win, does that change any of your opinion of where the Buccaneers are? Does that make you think, okay, at least we know they're hot going into the playoffs, which they have to be hella hot on offense to even have a chance?
No, I got pretty much the same opinion about them. They're just, they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat. They're like 9-0 against teams that are like non-playoff contenders, and then they face the good teams, like you said, Mac, minus the Packers. They just don't play as well. So I mean, yeah, anything can change, come playoff time. They can get on a hot run because you got Brady, who is just known for going off playoff runs all the time. So anything's possible, but until I see it, I'm just not going to change my overall view on the Buccaneers. They are a team that is good enough to get into the playoffs. And I mean, what kind of success has Bruce Arians had as a head coach in the playoffs? Like this is his first go around, isn't it? I mean, I can't remember. Did he go with the Cardinals to the playoffs?
He had to have, right? And then he would have been.
Oh, with
the Colts
Carson
as like
Palmer.
stepping in, right?
And
Like he was.
Carson Palmer when they went to the NFC Championship game and lost to the Panthers really bad.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine. I haven't looked, but he had that, and then wasn't he the one who stepped in for Pagano for the Colts? So technically, he's the head coach, in that.
Okay, so there's some success, but it's a very small sample size. So, but overall, point is, until I see further results with the Buccaneers, I'm just going to keep thinking the same thing. And the best right now, what they could do in my mind is maybe win one game and lose in the divisional round.
And then I think a little bit higher of them then. I think
conference championship.
Conference, yeah. I think it's plenty reasonable that they could make it to the conference championship, probably against Green Bay and max out there. But like Brady has impressed me. I would have taken the under on any stat of Brady, a few months ago to think like, oh, is this going to work? And it exceeded my expectations.
When you say a few months ago, are you meaning before the season or early in the season?
Before the season.
Because before the season, like I wasn't sure, but I would have bet it would have gone well just because I don't look at what happened last year with the Patriots as on Tom Brady getting old. I mean, obviously there are those, it's like marginal deterioration of like the arm strength, all these things, but they were bad because they had nobody to throw to. And as much as we think that's what the Patriots have had every year, this was the first year where it was completely bare cupboard, nobody there to sling the ball around to, and that we watched that offense not be able to move it. But the moment you put him in with this star-studded cast, and then you tell me that Rob Gronkowski's gonna go on the field, I didn't think Rob Gronkowski would necessarily have this type of performance because he's now rounding into being nearly as good as he was. I wouldn't say in his prime, but that sort of he's getting the stats of banged up Gronkowski, even though he's healthy right now. And that's a hell of a option to have for him. Yeah. I thought he'd have a pretty decent year. He'd add something to him, particularly when they have as many guys as they have in Tampa Bay. And I don't know if I would have predicted Tom Brady would have had this great statistical season, but I definitely thought it was going to be this huge jump. I didn't think they were just going to fall on their face. Now, early in the year, there were a couple games where like, shit, maybe they can. And it didn't turn around until that Packers game. And you're like, never mind. And you see Tom Brady, I think the biggest thing is, the only thing I'm really surprised by is that the arm strength is there. That arm strength that I didn't see last year. And it wasn't like people talked about it like he had no arm. That's not the case. But it wasn't the same Tom Brady arm. And he's never been a guy who was an elite deep passer anyways. But he had good enough arm strength to do it when he needed to. This year, he's just been chucking the ball around. That ball has come out faster than it has in like 6 years for him. And that's probably the main thing that I'm like, okay, what is the difference here? Like, is it just knowing that you have a guy like Mike Evans, you're willing to put that unleash it? Because if the ball is not quite as accurate as it is normally, Mike Evans is the type of receiver who's going to pull it down. Gronk's going to pull it down. So you just take those risks. I don't know what it is. Or if it's just he had that much more to prove. So he came in the best shape he could be. But that's probably been the most surprising. I just also don't know if that's going to be the big enough difference to get you over when we've seen them fall short enough times against good teams this season.
I'll throw in maybe another possibility, and that's the climate change. Maybe you're going from.
I like that.
I'm just throwing it in there. I mean,
Good idea.
you go from playing cold weather to where you don't have quite the same, arm strength, to really get it out there, to now go and play in warm Tampa Bay in Florida most of the time. You got
Tom Brady, like half of his games though are going to warmer places, and he didn't magically have a stronger arm though. So I don't know if he's just getting out more. He's not trapped inside from the cold. I don't know.
It's not the main reason. I'm just throwing it out there, Mac.
In my head, I thought that Tom Brady was going to be like my action figures after I had played with them, for a long time, and the arms would just kind of dangle. And they would never stay up. They were just gone, I thought. And so, putting Brady in a retirement home community really brought him back to life. And
that's fair.
I'm on board.
All right. 49ers Cardinals is the other Friday game, but I don't really care to talk about it. Seems like Cardinals hopefully are just a year out. The pieces don't quite line up. And then we know that the 49ers have really enjoyed playing spoiler to potential playoff teams. So I think that's really all there is there for that 2012 game. I didn't think I learned anything extra from it. Going down to the slate of Sunday games.
Is Kyler Murray elite?
Say what?
Is Kyler Murray elite?
I'll give it another year, and then we'll come back to it.
All right.
So that question was brought up this morning on First Take, and it's not, if he can't lead a team to a playoffs, he's not considered elite.
Yep, because Aaron Rodgers stopped being elite when he missed the playoffs. Those years.
See, there's 16 elite, or 15 elite quarterbacks in the NFL.
And one of them might be Baker Mayfield.
You guys have a looser definition of elite than me.
Hey, it's not me. I'm just repeating what I heard on First Take.
You cannot make the playoffs and still be elite. That happens. I mean, it doesn't happen as much because there are elite guys who will themselves in. But Nick, you can't make that face. Was Aaron Rodgers not elite when they finished 9-7?
Heck yeah, he was.
Then I think elite is top 3. But
Look at the other parts of your team. Get an actual defense that knows how to stop people for once.
It's a very polite defense.
And work on getting your rookie linebacker, who's a stud, at least he was in college, local kid, local product, Simmons, to play better. And maybe get a new head coach, maybe, because he's on the hot seat, possibly.
No. You just want everybody in the hot seat, Justin. I don't know what's happening right now. You're just putting everybody on.
More people should be in danger of being fired, just as a rule.
Yeah, fire everybody every single year. Yep. If you didn't make the playoffs, you're not elite. The team doesn't want you. You're out.
Yep.
It's we don't need relegation in NFL. We just need massive firings every season.
I would do nothing but 1-day contracts for everybody. You come to my office and I'll tell you if you're still.
Oh, the best boss in the world, Nick Adams. Browns Jets. This is a game with a lot of people potentially be fired.
Oh boy!
They are doing everything they can to keep their jobs. Now, Jets get a 23-16 win over a Browns team that is just ravaged by positive COVID cases. No wide receivers. They lost a couple linebackers. Just so much missing there, and
run
still
the ball.
Well, you can't run the ball. If you know. This is the perfect point. This is why people need to understand football better. You can't just magically run the football if they know 100% you can't throw the ball. Not only because Baker Mayfield's not all that great of a quarterback, but also because he has nobody to throw it to. They have to pull in 4 random guys and throw them out there and see what happens. They've never even learned the offense. When you have that, there is no way you could just say, even that we've watched this rushing attack murder people all year. The Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are a backfield that is so dangerous, but you have nothing. And that's why the running back value is gone. You have nothing if you can't at least be a threat to pass the ball, because teams can shut you down if they know that's all you can do. Literally, Derrick Henry might be the only guy who can run when they know 100% he's going to run the ball. And the Titans have found a way to finally have it where Tannehill's throwing the ball. So there's nobody else. The way rushing attacks work as elite as you are, you have to have that threat to throw. So the idea of why didn't you run the ball? Because running the ball didn't work. They got shut down in that game. And there was nothing else they could do except try to throw the ball, try to get back in it. And they end up losing to the Jets. That one, I don't hold anything against the Browns. You couldn't win that game. And it looks like they're going to be in that same situation while a very tight AFC, easily the Browns can find themselves on the outside and it'd be no fault of their own. Now they've had the Browns practice facility shut down. It's going to be very hard for them to win this week and get into the playoffs. It will be the one time that I'm not going to say Baker Mayfield gets to stay in the elite category by not making the playoffs because he was never elite to begin with. But I will say that I'm not going to hold it against Baker Mayfield and the rest of this Brown squad if they find themselves on the outside because they just ran into a very bad circumstance in the final 2 weeks of the year.
And Jets, bravo for blowing your opportunity.
Hey, good on the Jets. That's good sportsmanship to keep playing and winning.
You guys are both wrong here. Don't ever clap for the Jets and no, Nick, the Jets did mess up by not getting Trevor Lawrence. Like, Jaguars, they're genius. They came out the first week. They showed how good they were. They won the game, and then they're like, okay, now let's do what we need to do to get Trevor Lawrence. Good job by Jacksonville. Bad job by Nick and Justin during this part of the.
I would fire them. I would fire anybody who's tanking.
And by the way, Mac, I was doing
They did, Greg Williams.
Mac, I was trying to do a sarcastic clapping. Way to go, Jets, for blowing your opportunity.
Wasn't clear. Didn't like it.
Oh,
next up, Colts Steelers. This is I swear to God, I tweeted out very early in the game. I had it was one of the old takes exposed or whatever that Twitter account is. I was basically calling out Jackson Schneider, one of the guests I've had on the show, who early in the year I think the conversation started from Aaron Rodgers and how long he'll play. But by the end, it was Jackson saying that Big Ben's going to play till he's 42. And I'm like, I swear to God, if Big Ben makes it to 42, fine. Every quarterback is going to make it till 42. That's in my head what's going to happen. But I get that we're going to have these quarterbacks keep getting older, but I still think it's just going to be the handful of elite guys, even if they don't make it in the Nick's category of elite. Those are going to be the guys who can play into their 40s. But even with the rule changes, it's just not going to be the standard. And a guy like Big Ben, who's taken so many hits, won't make it there. Well, as we get to the end of the year, and I finally remembered I should shove that in his face, that Big Ben has played terribly, I tweet that out, and that is literally the spark that leads Big Ben to just destroy the Colts, make the comeback. And I'm just like, never mind, sorry, my bad. Exact wrong time to criticize Big Ben and the fact he can't throw down the field because he decided to specifically prove me wrong and throw down the field. Nick, you seem to have already been upset. I don't even know which point you want to jump on, but I'll let you have at it. What'd you think of this game and Big Ben getting back, into looking like a quarterback, and the Colts, Philip Rivers doing what he always does?
There's an old saying that even a Big Ben is right twice a day. And in this case, I don't know. Fine, maybe a terrible 5-game skid, to end the season would have been too much to kind of hope for. But it's like, all right, they can get this win. I don't know. I still don't like them, even against the Browns or whatever first round matchup they end up with in the playoffs.
I mean, if the Browns can't get everybody back healthy, and even if they do, I mean, look how long it's taken teams that have had those outbreaks. I think the Titans might be the only one that kind of came out on the other side and made it through without taking a huge step back. But the Ravens fell apart. And I think with the Titans, it was more kind of specific players that were knocked out and the inability to get themselves back in the practice facility. But it wasn't a big chunk of key contributors getting COVID and having to recover from it. If the Browns have that and they're having guys who are missing a couple weeks of practice, maybe get on the field just a little bit before that game. Steelers, historically, I know it doesn't have any bearing on this specific team, but they just don't lose first round playoff games. If the Steelers make the playoffs, they're winning at least one before they get booted out. That's historically what the Steelers have done. And with the Steelers team, I don't think that the 11-0 start with how bad they've fallen off means that, you should just, they have still the potential to get together during the playoffs. I think they've always had a lot of flaws, but the fact that they were a team that were able to pull that off at their best, if they can correct this at all, I will take them over the bottom part of the teams that slip into the playoffs. definitely the Browns, and then I'd say the Titans, and then it's tough. Then there's a lot of teams because I'm not sure which one makes it in, but obviously they just beat the Colts. So I think there are those bottom teams that barely slip in that they get, and then the top half, very little chance against the Bills, and then I think a Ravens team that otherwise the Steelers look like this was going to be a year they get to dominate the Ravens, shove it in their face. Now I think heading into the postseason, the Ravens are a much better bet than the Steelers.
Look, the Steelers beat the Ravens both times this year.
I think so. It's accurate, right?
Could look and see if they did. Let's see.
I do know that the Ravens are playing great right now.
Like both of those things sound right. That it's like that the Steelers, beat them, but also I would not take the Steelers. I would take the Ravens over the Steelers in a third matchup.
Also, weren't they the first time that I think it was it the Ravens beating the Steelers twice, and then the Steelers beat them in the playoffs, or the other way around? I believe that was the first time that there was a third matchup where the team that got beat the first two times ends up either they won the third one or they were the first time they lost all three. Whatever it was like a huge deal back, like, I don't know, 2007, 2008, where they were the first time that had happened, where a team facing three times, whatever the thing that hadn't been done. I think Steelers, Ravens were the ones who did it for the first time.
And so, by the way, the Steelers did sweep Baltimore by a combined 9 points.
Solid. I think right now, without a doubt, I'd go with the Ravens playing better, but I still don't think a Browns team that is going through what they're going through right now, if they can slip into the playoffs, will be able to beat the Steelers. And then Colts, they should have won. The Colts should have been able to hold on to that game. So I don't think it's impossible to imagine them winning against the Steelers. I think the Steelers will get a win, and then they'll get tossed the second week.
Yeah, but when you got
Colts, you shoot them.
And when you got Phillip Crybe or Rivers, always going to find a way to mess you up. You know where you're going to end up being.
Yeah, I always feel bad for him though, because then you get like at the end of the game, they're blaming him. And I'm like, there was nowhere to throw the ball. Like he didn't throw like a stupid interception that he normally does. It was just they didn't convert. They didn't get the win. Like how is that old Rivers? And that's all everybody said. Like there's Rivers being Rivers again. Like. Losing, like most 50% of the teams lose. That's not
true. You're going away from the running game. You're not using your stud rookie running back.
Because you're trailing. You have to move down the field and score. Like I think at some point in time, like Phillip Rivers losing in the closing minutes is not on Phillip Rivers if he's not throwing a boneheaded interception. Like at some point, we can't just say because they lost the game. Like that's Rivers again.
Well, he's made a career out of it. So I think you can say
that's kind of why people do it, because he's made a career out of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait to make fun of him when he throws a last-second interception.
I mean, he makes Brett Favre look smart sometimes, and we know Brett Favre's the king of interceptions.
Is he?
Yes,
he the king,
all-time leader.
Yeah, but that's just because he played the longest and he took chances, man.
Well, if you lead in some, you're the king.
I could imagine Phillip Rivers playing in more games than Brett Favre. Eventually.
He'll get there.
Yeah.
So let's see. I don't know if I care about anything else that happened this last week. I think at some point we'll just have to jump straight to the Chiefs. I mean, I don't care about Cowboys, Eagles.
Just real quick, I know we didn't really touch on this when we were talking Dolphins Raiders, but did you like Gruden's decision to tell Jacobs to slide and not score the touchdown?
No. Jacobs was on my team.
That's painful. That's painful. That's.
I mean, you play the analytics, and if things don't work out for you, then that's what happens. It's just funny when it's the Raiders because it blows up in their face. Like they can't even do the smart things right, and I love it. It's so fun to watch.
I would have scored. I would have scored the touchdown, but of course there was only 19 seconds eventually left, and all you gotta do is just stop him. I mean, it's not, you can't really blame the offense. You can't blame Gruden's decision making. He said himself, he doesn't regret the decision. He just regrets the results.
Yeah, it's one of the few times I agree with John Gruden. Bears, Jaguars. You get the Bears getting a 41-17 win. The only reason I bring this up is because we've now gotten the stretch at the end of a Chicago season where they're not good. They're clearly not good. And Mitch Trubisky plays just good enough for them to have the conversation. Do we re-sign Mitch Trubisky? And there's nothing more Bears than that. It's so great.
Oh, my gosh.
What was that, Nick? What was the one?
Re-sign him for one day.
That's a good plan, actually. I don't know how you write that contract, but
don't franchise tag him and sign him to a 5-year contract or whatever.
Oh my god,
that'd be hilarious. It'd be stupid. It'd be typical Chicago, I think, if they did that.
Man,
their history of quarterbacks is just pathetic. It really is. I mean, outside McMahon, who was okay, he wasn't great in '85. It was that Bears defense that carried them to the championship.
I'm a big Rex Grossman fan.
Oh my God, Rex Gross! Oh my gosh, Kyle Orton. Oh, the names: Jim Miller, Jim Harbaugh. Cordell Stewart.
Yeah, not even good Cordell Stewart because only
Jonathan
Steelers only got that for like half a season.
Craig Krenzel, the former Ohio State quarterback, played for them.
I got told that I look like Kyle Orton one time.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm.
And so he made it on
the head shape.
And I wasn't flattered by it.
Yeah, I don't think you have a lot of features the same. You just have the same head shape.
Mm.
But hey, he was part of that upset win for the Chiefs against the Packers, and they were undefeated. That was beautiful.
Yeah, it's the only thing I know from Kyle Orton's career that matters. So. He did make a lot of money by doing nothing, which he's in the top 5. He might be in the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks who never did anything but made a shit ton of money.
Number one, Chase Daniel.
Daniel is leading that one, although he hasn't made enough money to be worth enough for people to say his last name correctly. So, I mean, is it really worth it to him? Does he really think that sticking around this long to have one more time being called Chase Daniels is worth it? He seems to think so, and I'd probably do the same. I don't care about Bengals, Texans, Chargers, Broncos. I care about Justin Herbert, so I've watched a little bit of it, but I don't care to talk about it.
Past the rookie record touchdowns.
I think Panthers, Washington, the big thing just being with Washington losing and that kind of fairy tales kind of coming to an end. And then now we get, the last chance. And, I brought this up, Justin, I kept saying every week that I'm like, Washington's in control, but the Cowboys still have the easiest schedule. They still have the path. And now they get to beat the Eagles. And all of a sudden we are in this moment where, I mean, pulling up the standings real fast. Do the Eagles still have? Nope, the 2 games out now. So that moment, that tie could have came in, but sure enough, it's easier schedule. Cowboys can take this one here, while the Washington really has nothing left in the tank. So I don't know. I don't know how much money I made on that bet. I have to go and check my bookie. But y'all should have listened to me like 5 weeks ago, man. Like
it may seem like everything's lost now for Washington, but
everything is lost.
Hey, Ron Rivera, don't count him out.
He's going to go out and play quarterback?
I mean, as getting this team ready, prepared to try to win a game. That's what I mean. I'm not saying
the only chance they have is that the Eagles are terrible, but if this was Carson Wentz running it, I'd still wait. I'd wait and see. But I think Jalen Hurts has enough for them to beat this Washington team that while they have a good defense, that offense, there's just nothing there now. It's you just have to imagine with the way they should have had it, the way that they were in position, and then Seahawks game, you don't expect them to win, but they had a shot. You have to beat the Panthers, and now you are just in a situation where it's do or die. And yeah, I think they're gonna find their way on the outside looking in. I'd be hella surprised if Washington gets that win and gets in over the Cowboys.
That's fair.
I'm hella surprised enough that it's the Sunday night game.
Yeah, that was a bit. I didn't see that coming. I thought it'd just be a it'd be right there with all the other Sunday games, either at noon or 3:25.
Well, it's like there's only a few games that have, actual like chance to make the playoffs, chance to move around. Everything's kind of short up. So as bad as the NFC East is, it's the most intriguing division in football right now for one more week, and then it's gone.
It's kind of intriguing in the way that a roadkill of an animal that you're not quite sure what animal it is intriguing.
Yeah.
What's going on there? It's like some kind of.
I was hoping. I thought it really would come down to. I thought it would be a 5-win team, and it was pretty damn close to happening. Washington needed some miracles down the stretch. Cowboys. I think a lot of it was just kind of figuring out how to play with it being Andy Dalton as the backup. Like they had to remember that they had good pieces outside of Dak Prescott, and they're like, we're still bad, but like we're better than these other teams in the NFC East. It took them a bit to remember. But yeah, it was pretty damn close to getting a 5-win team being the divisional winner and making the playoffs.
Beautiful. I would have been rooting for that.
So all of that, I think there is some interesting. It's just not good football. So it'll be more interesting when whichever team. I swear to God, if one of them wins a playoff game, I'm going to be very upset. But that's all for. Is there any other game that we haven't talked about other than the Chiefs that we want to hit for Week 16 before we knock out a couple bets and then get a tiny bit of NBA talk before we head on out?
Let's see. I gotta step out for a second here.
All right, so I'm gonna look here. Jump to Week 17.
I had not even looked at odds or anything like that when you're talking about bets.
I guess we did we talk all that much about the Titans? I think that's an interesting one because Titans Packers, like, I don't know how much that moves the needle for me for the Packers, although it is the first game against a playoff team where, we talk about the Packers kind of blowing out teams. This is the first one against what has been a good team this year. That I think is important, but I think I had already kind of looked at it as Packers had kind of moved themselves to the one spot. And until I see Drew Brees return for the Saints and be able to, just not wince every time somebody touches him. I think that's kind of like the Saints could steal it away, but I think that's 1-2 easily. And I don't think anything the Packers did gets them more over the Saints. I think they were already just kind of placeholder for the Saints until future notice. Once the Saints show me that Drew Brees is healthy and able to be himself when he's out there, then I think the Saints just take it. Because as good as the Packers have been, I don't think that does anything for me. I think it's Saints. I think that's the best team in the NFC to me. That game, though, it does something, and it makes the Titans whatever I thought they could do, where I thought it was kind of – I had been all year talking about how the Browns were better because they knew what they were. Over the second half of the season, I start to, hedge that. Even with the Browns beating the Titans, I thought it was still kind of like the Titans have that upside. When they're going, they have so much firepower that I think I was wrong on that take. This ended it for me. This is this game. It's like, never mind the Titans. It's not like whatever that is, whatever that upside is, that's not going to be playoff football that they get it's not even going to be the same run that they had last year. They have better weapons. They have more firepower, and they are a worse team because last year they knew that Tannehill was the backup option to giving it to Derrick Henry. Tannehill's job was to take as much pressure off Derrick Henry as he could so Derrick Henry could run wild. This year, Derrick Henry is still running wild. They are amassing points. They are a worse team. They are less likely to make a deep playoff run than they were last year. And it's crazy to think that's a possibility that you could do that. You could take that step forward and somehow be worse. Part of it is the worst defense, but part of it is not knowing that Derrick Henry is the better option. He is the one guy in the NFL that you get what I don't care what the statistics say. There's more value in what Derrick Henry's doing than if you're getting, 7-8 yards per play on a passing with Tannehill, because it will blow up in your face. At least with Derrick Henry, you might end up losing to a team like the Chiefs, but you're able to consistently stay in the game with Derrick Henry being the number one option. And that's slowly but surely not been what the Titans have done. Derrick Henry's still getting his, but Tannehill's the number one option, and it ends tragically.
Wait, the Titans, how far did they go in the playoffs last year?
They went to the conference championship game against the Chiefs, and then at a lead.
That was the
oh,
yeah.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
I think I was getting maybe the Texans and Titans mixed up there in my head.
Yeah,
but
I think the Texans was that first week, right? Like that was the first round for the Chiefs and the after the bye.
I guess what I was kind of thinking was the Titans-Packers game. To me, was more about the goodness of the Packers than necessarily the Titans being worse than I thought they were. I think the Packers have just really, they've gotten hot at the right time. Aaron Rodgers in the last 4 weeks is probably taking the MVP race. And
that's actually going to be the next topic. Once I don't know where Justin went, but once he gets back, we will have our MVP of who wins. But it seems like you and Justin are on the same side. I'm going to have to play full on devil's advocate as I push for 2 different guys as alternative options.
I'm excited. So I'm trying to think of who would fit the category this year. But usually when I think of MVP races, I try to look at, all right, what team is significantly worse now that they've lost somebody? The idea of okay, this person has proven their value a year too late is a way that I think MVP should be considered more often.
That's fair. I'm trying to think, who that would be, because there was nobody that really fits the bill. It's because Stephon Diggs was probably the biggest jump, go somewhere else. And as we mentioned earlier, Justin Jefferson stepped into his place. So the Vikings didn't feel that loss the way I imagine they would have when he first went off to Buffalo.
Maybe Hopkins?
Yeah, except that that's a whole. There's so many more things that are the reason that the Texans aren't good. So it's tough. It's pretty close. I think in terms of the Titans, I'd probably agree with you that that's more about the Packers being good than the Titans being bad, if not for one thing, and that's that game you're in it in the third quarter, and the Packers put on the Jets. If you're good enough, and it's not about how problem with the Titans. You have to keep up. You have to put points. You can't roll over and die while Aaron Rodgers just keeps kicking you in the fourth quarter. That can't happen. You can't become a Simpsons meme and tell me that it's not about how bad the Titans are. It is. That is a problem. For them to do that, and if you go back and you're looking at okay, what did the Titans do well against playoff teams? There is just too many problems there where. The one benefit of this year when you have that, push to use Tannehill more often is you should be able to keep up with elite offenses. They haven't, though. They have, packed on more points against bad teams. And, that led to them being one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL. But they're also – you still don't see them going into shootout with Buffalo, with the Chiefs, with the Packers, and being able to keep up with that high scoring affair. Not even win, just keep up. And if you can't do that, then I don't think your ability to make a deep playoff run, I don't think it's there. I don't think anything we saw from the Titans this year matters. And I think it's even worse than it was last year where they did make that deep playoff run, but entirely because they played a different kind of football. We're going to have Derrick Henry. We're going to go old school. We've been told it doesn't work, except Derrick Henry is the outlier. He can make it happen, and we just need Tannehill to be just good enough. Now they're going in with a completely different plan, and they're not even doing it well enough to keep up with these top teams. So I am taking it as this was a bad sign for me, where I thought the Titans, maybe I wouldn't have bet on them to do too much, but I could imagine it. Now I will be hella surprised if the Titans can even win a single playoff game. We are going to just finish up, and we're going to go to that MVP debate. We got to get there, and I'll let you two start. Apparently you guys are on the same side. It's just Aaron Rodgers. He's just won it. He's just taken all these great victories against the Titans and against the Titans. He has piled up points, beat the Eagles by 2 touchdowns. The point is, He is on fire right now. There's no arguments to say anybody else is MVP. Maybe there is. We'll get to in a second. But I'll let you guys say why it's very clear because you guys are both on the same side. He's just won it. Tell me why Aaron Rodgers is your MVP this year. We'll start with Justin.
Well, Mac, it's like what I just, what I told you before we got started. It's just looking at the different comparisons of recent games between the two in Mahomes and Rodgers. Mahomes has really struggled in certain ways recently to where you're seeing a more consistent Aaron Rodgers. And I'll probably say this, and it's probably true. Rodgers is throwing to less weapons minus Devontae Adams, unlike Mahomes, where he's got Hill, he's got Kelsey. And I know you talked about it, Hardman, who's been –
one more weapon. Huh? So one more weapon. He has one more elite weapon over Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and it'd be fewer.
Throwing to I know Edwards-Helaire is not in there right now, but you can throw to Bell coming out of the backfield. That's another weapon you can add to the arsenal for Mahomes. And yeah, Rodgers can do the same thing with the rookie Dylan from Boston College, or throw it to Jones coming out of the backfield. So maybe Rodgers has got maybe a little more of a step up as far as weapons maybe than Mahomes. But overall, the point is I think Rodgers has just been playing better recently compared to Mahomes, where I think Mahomes has been a little off his game. And I just think right now, I think there's still time. I think Mahomes can absolutely jump back in front. I'm not saying
he's not even going to play this week.
Yeah, and they don't consider playoffs.
I consider playoffs as time to jump back out in front. So
MVP?
Yeah.
It's regular season. That's a regular season stat, man.
To me, it shouldn't be. But the rules are it is. So I know the rules state it is, and it's just like also the Heisman Trophy. Wait until after the season's done. Don't do it before all the bowl games. It's stupid.
All right,
I won't argue with you. I think I would be willing to, in many sports, reconsider it. Although I do think in football, MVP has to be a regular season stat because it's such a random occurrence in the postseason. You have teams that can get knocked out in 1 week. The best team rarely wins the Super Bowl. I think NFL is the one where I do want it to be a regular season MVP. If you're going to get something for playoff performance, it's a Lombardi Trophy, and it is a Super Bowl MVP.
I heard a stat today on the Zone on Sports Radio 810 that only 5 teams that were either a top seed have won it all in the last 20 years, something like that. It's very, very rare have you had a top seed team, go all the way and not get beat, because there's been a lot of top seed teams in years that have gotten beat early. So yeah, I get it. It's a regular season stat. I get it, or a regular season award, not stat, but award. So, but the overall point is right now, I think Rodgers is your MVP, and Mahomes was probably 2-3 weeks ago, but ever since then, I think Mahomes has kind of slid up, and Rodgers has overtaken that spot.
All right. Well, I'll just say this: if I was to say it's Rodgers, it's not the last 3 weeks that have changed my mind. Watching Rodgers beat bad teams other than the Titans, and watching Mahomes have his first 2 average games, when he still was the main reason the Chiefs got the victory. I'm not going to slide those in, and neither of those games were worse than what Aaron Rodgers was playing against the Buccaneers. But there are other reasons why I would say Mahomes is the guy, and then I'll have another name up here soon. But I want to hear Nick's reasons for why he's going with it.
I already know the name. I already know it.
Well, so one thing, I'm not going with Aaron. I think Aaron Rodgers probably will win it if I was a betting man.
Who are you picking? Who do you think is the most valuable player in the NFL this year?
I'm going to go with Deshaun Watson.
I love it.
I'm going with Deshaun Watson. I think, the value for a team, the most valuable player on a team goes, I think with Deshaun Watson, what he's put up, with and what he's done. stats wise, is as much as can be expected of anybody, or more than what can be expected. That he's accurate, and I don't know exactly who he's throwing to, but they're catching the ball.
None of us know who he's throwing to.
And I don't know, the dog guy or somebody.
And other guys.
Yeah, QT and
David Johnson, actually. It's like it's out of the backfield throwing to his running back, which only had him being in there and healthy for a little while now.
Rodgers is throwing the ball to arguably one of the best non-QB MVP candidates in Davante Adams. And so, no, and I think Deshaun Watson's just the range between like his quality of play versus the team he's on is the biggest range of anybody right now.
Nick, you had me. I wasn't going to say you're right, because obviously you're arguing a different point, but I feel like your point just fell off a cliff when you said Davante Adams is the most likely non-QB MVP. Like, here's the thing. Not only are wide receivers not as valuable, like the idea is when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers, as much as Davante Adams is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, you can't be the most valuable. You can't tell me Deshaun Watson gets it because of his value to the team and what he's capable of doing when you go for a wide receiver who most of the time does not get to touch the ball. Even when he has great games, he gets 12 catches, a couple hundred yards. That is so small compared to what a quarterback gets to do when the ball is in their hands, what a running back gets to do, what a defensive player when they're able to stop a quarterback from shredding you. So in terms of value, you can't make a value argument with Deshaun Watson and then tell me that Davante Adams is on your short list of non-QB most valuable players. Because that's not where the value is in the game of football, is not in being an elite wide receiver over.
They don't have widespread position awards like best wide receiver, or maybe they do on a smaller level. But
probably they have it in Madden. I don't know.
All right, yeah, like positional awards, and in that case, he would win that positional award.
Arguable.
And so to say it's like, that he can't be in a conversation for non-quarterback MVPs if he's in the conversation or leading the conversation in a positional award for best wide receiver.
I'm saying once you pull quarterback out, right? So this is the idea is you're saying, let's look at the rest of football. Wide receiver is not the top of the list. Like, that is not the thing that is like, okay, once we get past, we know quarterback is its own thing. Like, if you're picking MVP and you're trying to be real about it, the most valuable, it's quarterback. All right, next up, it's not wide receiver. Like, even in a league where replacement level running backs don't matter, a top running back can have more value to a team than a wide receiver if they're good at catching out of the backfield. Now, the difference between them and another running back is small, but the actual impact on a team can be high. And if we're doing anybody, it's, the problem is for offensive linemen, they're split up between 5 guys, but it's whoever the top lineman is. Like, that's going to be more impactful for you being a great football team. The number one reason Aaron Rodgers is better this year than he's been another year is because that offensive line has been great. So take the top guy over the best offensive line, and he's more important than Davante Adams is. Because I've watched Aaron Rodgers have great years, throw into a broken Jordy Nelson and a broken Randall Cobb, and he's still getting it to him and picking it up. So Davante Adams is amazing. He's great. But in terms of your impact, that pushing you over the top, it's not the top wide receiver that's going to be the most valuable player outside of the quarterback position. That's all I'm saying, man. So you had me for a second, but you guys are both wrong. I'm just kidding. Aaron Rodgers is a perfectly fine pick for MVP, but I think the idea that he's won it over the last few weeks is nonsense. I think if you're looking at the stats themselves, Aaron Rodgers won the MVP. Like, he's got it. But when you factor in offensive line, we're not even going to talk wide receivers because apparently I've heard both sides of it. Either Aaron Rodgers has the better weapons, Mahomes has the better weapons, and it just is a back and forth that nobody can decide what matters more. Having 2 elite guys or having a whole stable of guys and a running back and consistency back there where the Chiefs, they got Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell's yet to be the Le'Veon Bell that would make me care to throw him into this debate.
Unfortunately.
Elaire is a rookie who then got injured and hasn't quite broken out the way that you would expect him to when you're drafting him in the first round. So those other weapons, it is Hill and Kelsey, and then it's a bunch of guys who theoretically are really good. The Packers have a bunch of guys who, while they're not on the same level, it's Devontae Adams and then the rest. The rest are a lot of guys who are not theoretical. They are delivering week in and week out. So that idea, he has the better weapons, and most importantly, over my two MVP alternatives, he has the best offensive line. And so when you look at the stats, it's Rodgers. But the fact that it's not by a lot, the fact that Rodgers has padded his stats by taking 5-yard touchdowns where he's like, nah, Aaron Jones, no reason to get Mac any fantasy points this week. I'm throwing it in. Like the way they beat the Titans, where the Chiefs would have just finished the game. They would have got up by a couple touchdowns, ran it out, got the victory. The Packers laid it on. They went for those style points, baby. And while that's gotten Aaron Rodgers up to 44 touchdowns and he's accurate enough to keep it down to 5 interceptions. Say what?
The 5 interceptions. I wanted to draw attention to that.
So he kept it the 5 interceptions, and then Mahomes was beating him on that until the last 2 weeks. That's really the only big change for Mahomes is he had those interceptions that finally took it from just astronomical touchdown interception ratio to now Aaron Rodgers is winning on that. That's the only real big change. But the fact that the numbers are not that far off, I think Patrick Mahomes is at 7 touchdowns, 38 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He's got 4,700 passing yards, which really doesn't matter because you can do that in cleanup. But the fact that the Chiefs are only lost one game, it's hard to say that those passing yards don't matter. They would say that if you were a bad team that's not winning games and you're just, Deshaun Watson. So I think Patrick Mahomes, those numbers, they need to be a lot bigger for Aaron Rodgers to get it. Not just because I'll stop the argument on the wide receivers, on those weapons, but on the offensive line. Patrick Mahomes is running around for his life. 20% pressure rate that Aaron Rodgers is only dealing with 13%. Like that difference in offensive line, that's what wins you football games. I know we don't care. It's not a glamorous position. The offensive line, the defensive line, that's what changes games. That's what gets people over the top, even when you have guys like Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. And Aaron Rodgers in a perfect position. And the fact that the numbers are even close says, I'm going to lean on the guy who's 15-1 or should be 15-1 by the end of the year. I'm going to lean on the one with the best record while doing this. I'm going to lean on the one who, while has had off games to finish the year, never looked anywhere close to as bad as Aaron Rodgers did against the Buccaneers. Nowhere close. So that's where I would go if I'm going, because stats matter, but context matters too. That gets Mahomes back in the conversation. Another one that gets in the conversation, Josh Allen, because his numbers are right there with Patrick Mahomes. He's getting the same 20% pressure rate, and he is making it happen anyways. And as much as it's also, okay, Stephon Diggs is out there, that's the reason it's happening. He's throwing that damn ball to Cole Beasley. And don't pretend the Cole Beasley is some elite wide receiver. I'm sick of hearing about it. He is a pretty good wide receiver that when you have an elite quarterback, just chucking the ball at him, he really damn good.
Beasley's a really solid number 2, or maybe if you had him on other teams, a solid number 3. He is not your number 1. He is not an elite receiver, but he gets the job done. And that's good enough.
He's a fun slot receiver, and it helps to have Josh Allen
his whole career.
Damn mind. And then you add in the rushing, and he is such a crazy threat that when we're talking about most valuable, even with the addition to Stephon Diggs, when you're talking about like what does this team look like without their quarterback? That Packers team, I can imagine with Jordan Love in there, I can imagine them finding an offense that works with the receiving threats, with Aaron Jones as being a workhorse back. If you get rid of Patrick Mahomes from the Chiefs, it's tough because the defense is not nearly good enough to do that. But we also saw last year when Mahomes went out, they found a way to win games with Matt Moore, Chad Henne. They don't care. So Andy Reid can steal you some games. That Buffalo team without Josh Allen is garbage. They're not doing a damn thing without Josh Allen. So if we're going that MVP, we're going all about the value. We're taking that argument that Nick made earlier. It's Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the MVP of the NFL.
Who is the backup, by the way, for the Buffalo Bills? I have no idea who
they have random guys. They probably have Josh McCown sitting on a ranch waiting to come in if Josh Allen gets going.
It's Matt Barkley.
Worse than I thought. The point is
I thought it was me. I was wondering if I'm the backup. I'm not sure.
Nick Adams draws straws every week to be the guy who gets to come in if there's a COVID outbreak.
I'm pretty sure. I'm
not real wild though about one of your arguments of just like taking the quarterback of the team with the best record. Being like,
it's if all things are even, and in this case, it's slightly favored stats to Aaron Rodgers. But I'm willing to even that back out with the fact that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have an offensive line. The fact that you can have those type of just record-breaking numbers while your starting right tackle's out. I don't know what happened to Eric Fisher, but over the last 2 weeks, he went from All-Pro to
back in. Sorry, Mac. But
back in his rookie year, yes, he is over the last 2 years been amazing. Before that, questionable with Eric Fisher. He has looked like that over the last couple weeks. I assume it's because of an injury, but it's also because they know that you can't double team him because nobody else on the offensive line is good enough. Patrick Mahomes doesn't care. And if what we saw over the last 2 weeks where those interceptions against the Dolphins, like this is the worst game Patrick Mahomes could have. He won them the game. Like you can't look at those numbers and say, well, that's the thing that knocked him out of the conversation. And we get to forget about Aaron Rodgers' poor performance because it happened, week 4 or whatever in the season. I think that's nonsense. And so then when it's all things even, I'm going to lean on the guy that I know his top end has been higher, what Patrick Mahomes has done. He didn't have an awful performance like Aaron Rodgers has on his resume, and he's leading the best team in the NFL as the sole reason they're that damn good. So I would say I'd go Mahomes over Aaron Rodgers, but if I'm being cheeky about it, it's Josh Allen, baby. That's the MVP.
All right. Well, yeah.
And we know that you're not just saying that because he's on your fantasy team.
No, because fantasy's over. I already lost, and I'm still in Josh Allen's corner.
Man. Well,
Eric Fisher has been fighting a back injury just like Mitchell Schwartz, but of course Schwartz is more severe because obviously he's not be playing in the postseason and hasn't played since what?
But do we know he's not playing in the postseason? I thought it was still IR, and he could.
It's. I think it's been ruled. I think I saw some kind of text alert from Arrowhead Addict that came out and said that he wasn't going to play in the postseason
this week. Because I know that's all that's been the conversation is will he be able to return? And
I mean, I hope he can, but I think from all indications, I think he's been ruled out, and he hasn't played since week 4. I mean, something like that. He's been out for a long time.
Yeah, but I know that was the big thing was like hoping he would be available, like have him on the IR through the start of the postseason. That's why these extra 2 weeks were going to be really helpful is get the rest of the offensive line healthy. Maybe it was still, I don't think I've heard from anybody that was sure, but it was definitely still that like, we hope it can happen. So I haven't seen recent news on it being official, but if he's officially out, that's going to be tough for the Chiefs. Hopefully just getting that rest will be the main thing that can get that offensive line as close to healthy as possible, because if they're even okay, Patrick Mahomes will make that work.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely.
So I think that's all for NFL. We were going to do bets, but we were here for a while. I still do want to talk NBA and what bets matter in the final week. It's nothing. I mean, not that I'm not going to make them, but me giving people advice. Bet whatever you want. Pick random games. Pick the Eagles to beat the Washington football team. Who knows what'll happen this week? This is free money, or it's not really free money.
I want to place a bet that just everybody's going to have fun.
That's the worst bet I've ever heard. Let's go NBA real fast. I don't really have anything specific to talk about in terms of the teams, because I think what we learned this year, and I think what a lot of insiders were kind of telling us to be ready for, is that when you have the turnaround that you have after the bubble, that you're going in to try to make it back for Christmas Day just so you can keep that slot and not give it up to the NFL, which I didn't look at the numbers for the one Christmas Day game, but I assume it just blew everything out of the water because that's what the NFL does. So I get why the NBA felt it's so important to not give that up even for 1 year, but we knew there weren't going to be great performances, or at least these teams were not going to come into the season ready to go. James Harden has been one of the most hilarious things that he's in the same shape that I am, and he's still going out. He did the same thing that got Dwayne Haskins fired, and then for Houston, like small fine, and James Harden didn't even apologize. He's like, I don't feel bad about this.
You can get away with anything if you produce. If James Harden it shows up out of shape, and then shoots 3 of 20 or something, and
he's not getting away with it.
He's not getting away with it. But no. If he wants to be an asshole or whatever and do whatever off the court and then come and drop 44 points, he can
get away with it.
I will say this. This is the one time I'll describe it for Harden. It's the Jordan gene. Like, he's better after having long nights out, partying, being out with the boys. James Harden comes back from a second game of a back-to-back, went out to the club the night before, and he shows up and hits a triple-double.
Yeah, he's still getting that glitter off of him. And
it's still on throughout the game. Like the last piece, because you can't get glitter off. So you can still see it. You can still see it on when he gets that final 44th point of a 15-10 triple-double. Like that's what James Harden does after partying. So in this case, you want him to go out there. It's actually, if he shows up sober, you're probably going to, I don't know, miss like 33s against the Warriors in the playoffs. Something like that. So just get him out there, get him out to the club. You need it, and I know it's tough in a pandemic. There's some more issues with James Harden debauchery, but in this case, that start of the year, we've seen teams just get blown out. We've seen that number I know Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing, but the Mavs up like 50. Like it was a number I can barely do in 2K against the computer. Like 78 to like 32 at half. Like this nonsense.
Yeah, but then they didn't even make a run in the second half, and so
they still won like 130 to like 90 something, right? Like it was still
a 50-point difference, and that I think was maybe even more disappointing in a sense.
You wanted them to win by like 70?
No, I would have expected the Clippers to get a little closer.
Oh, okay. I was expecting a more run from the Mavs in the second. Like if they could have just kept stretching that out, that would have been great.
Oh no, I was not expecting them to keep beating them.
I want you to keep Doncic in the whole time. I want a like 50-20-20 game from him. I want you to just embarrass the hell out of Paul George so he quits playing basketball. Like that's what the Mavericks' goals should have been when they came out at halftime. Like that's what I would have hoped for. Like I don't know. This is a preseason. That's what it is. Like they didn't get a real one, and although some of the teams had to get themselves prepared for legitimate competition on Christmas Day, everything outside of it for the next at least couple weeks, it might be a full month before these teams kind of round into shape. Because even when you have a full preseason, you have a normal year, it takes you 20 to 30 games before what you see isn't an anomaly and it becomes, okay, this is what the team's going to be this season.
Well, clearly,
it takes a while.
And it was an anomaly. Aside from that one game, and arguably just that one half, because the second half they played them evenly at least, Clippers are undefeated. So,
Yeah, and I would say, if anything, like, there's nothing from that game that tells you anything. Like it's one thing to be like, okay, they lost that game against the Mavs. Does that tell you that later in the season they're going to have a hard time with the Mavs? No. Like it literally gives you nothing takeaway other than it happened and it was fun Twitter banter for a little while. But otherwise, not that big of a deal. But it is something in terms of you're getting these guys back out there. They're taking risk. And although the NBA has probably been the best at minimizing the risk of COVID, it still is a risk, and it is getting these guys to come play. So shortly after this last season, they had to put them in a bubble, and now they're not even able to do that the same way. Like to have that and have it where now you're sending guys out for the next 20 games of like half-assed basketball, of like feeling it out, figuring it out. I think there are some concerns there. It's not ideal for the NBA to have that happening. At the same time, I think it's the one sport I haven't felt like a little bad watching during a pandemic. I think all the other ones have made me cringe a little bit, thinking of the ramifications of trying to play in a COVID world right now when things are not necessarily looking up. NBA is the only one where I'm like, well, I don't know. They did everything right as they could. This is the least concerned I am is watching an NBA game happen with guys that I know that at this point, the last one was 0 players total test positive on the most recent update. So they have very consistently held that down. And the only concern is James Harden infecting the entire league.
With chlamydia.
I'm going to say that the most impressive team so far has been the Nets, because this is now the first full year you're going to have. Well, let's hope. I mean, I don't want to have to see any news of Kevin Durant going down with another injury or Kyrie Irving going down with an injury. But so let's say this is the first full year you're going to have the duo of KD and Kyrie Irving. And so far, I mean, you're just talking, Mac, about how a lot of these teams are going to get in sync after, 20, 30 games. I mean, it looks like already, and it's just a couple sample of games, but they're already in sync already, and they're blowing teams out. So I think right now, if you're looking for a team that's looking really good and an early favorite to, make a run at it, it's the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's less about their record and how they've played. It's more about how Kevin Durant's looked immediately.
Right.
We don't know what it's like. There's been very few instances of a player coming back from an Achilles injury, even fewer of a big man coming back from an Achilles injury. And to have Kevin Durant out there and to so quickly just be dominant. He's back to he's top 3 in the league. It took no time at all. And we had questions whether he could even play again. Could he be play, but fall down into a realm where maybe sometimes he looks like a top 3 guy, but is consistently more in, the 5 to 15 range or worse. And the fact that he came out and immediately got to that level, the fact that he is working so well with Kyrie, the only thing that could ruin it is James Harden. The way they played, and we also knew that was a Brooklyn team. They won without Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah,
that's how good they were.
They got to the playoffs.
The only concern was Kevin Durant being healthy and Kyrie Irving being a cancer. And in this case, I think with Kevin Durant on the court, most of Kyrie's problems are gone. I think those are two guys that are, the reason they joined up in Brooklyn was because they liked each other. They wanted to play together. And when it is those two, I don't know what happens if they get their wish fulfilled and James Harden becomes the guy. But when you have two guys who can score at that level, and then they have a team already built around them with so many good role players, I don't think you're going to get the same issues with Kyrie Irving. I don't think Kevin Durant is such a low profile guy. Kyrie is going to get to be the at least alpha in the media, or in this case, not talking to the media. He gets to be the glamorous one. He doesn't have the same, I'm in LeBron's shadow. He also feels more like a peer to Kevin Durant, and he never felt like that with LeBron. He felt LeBron was, patronizing to him. So that difference for Kyrie, I think, obviously last year you still saw the signs. It can go poorly when things are going poorly, but they're so good it won't go poorly very often. And they're built to be what the Warriors were before they gutted their team to get Kevin Durant. And then when Kevin Durant leaves, you can't really, fill the cupboard again, and Klay Thompson gets injured. So, they're in trouble.
The Warriors, that's bad luck.
How sad is that, by the way? I mean, you get Steph back and you're thinking, okay, I mean, you got your stud shooter back who's going to lead you the way. But when you miss Klay Thompson, when those two are not together, boy, it's a massive difference. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think, in fairness, even if Klay Thompson's there, I think when James Wiseman's playing as good as he has early in the year, if that looks like something that can be sustained, which we've rarely seen rookies who have figured out the defensive side of the ball as quick as he has, and it's hard to imagine that being the thing that put you over the top, but it could have. And then there were other players that maybe they figure out the role. Does Andrew Wiggins look as unplayable as he does right now if he's next to Klay Thompson rather than now you're supposed to be our second leading scorer? What changes when Klay Thompson's out there? But still, they are just not built the same way they were pre-Kevin Durant, because you had to get rid of Harrison Barnes to get Kevin Durant. You had locked up all of the salary cap, and it's just impossible to get too many of these, tertiary, players to help out that team. And so even with Klay, it was they obviously had the upside. We know what those guys are capable of when they're firing all cylinders. But even Klay, we didn't know what he would look like coming back from the ACL injury. Now where it's an ACL on one, a Achilles on the other, long-term the Warriors are in trouble. Short-term, they haven't looked good. I'm hoping they look better. I think Steph Curry, by the time he rounded, remember, he got hurt at the beginning of last year. It hasn't played basketball in a year. So I think the Warriors, that's another one where I'm not going to say you can't take away from the Nets being damn, they're that good, because I think what we've seen is what we'll see through a lot of the year. We won't really know exactly what they look like until we're about 20 games in, but they'll be good. The Warriors, don't judge them by how bad they've looked like at the beginning. I think by 20 games in, we'll start to see what is this team really going to look like. That's not saying they're going to turn it around and necessarily be a playoff team, because that's a long shot. But they should be fun to watch once Steph Curry kind of rounds into shape, once they kind of figure out what this team is, and how bad they've looked at the beginning of the season. I don't think really matters. I think those are the type of things, like, write it off as this is preseason for a team that has had a lot of changes, a lot of adversity. And I trust Steph Curry to start to figure it out and start to get this team on the right track as they start getting further into the season.
And to kind of point out what you were saying about KD coming back from an Achilles injury, hey, if Kobe can come back from one and play and still play,
that went well.
Yeah, I think
he was still Kobe, man. He was still Kobe.
Was he? Was he still Kobe?
I thought so. I don't think
he won how many playoff series post Achilles?
That's because the Lakers went downhill themselves.
And Kobe was old.
Jim Buss, the brother of Jeannie Buss, he ruined the franchise. She had to take over to make it better.
You know who made it better? LeBron James made it better. That's it. Nobody else did.
That's true, but Kobe was still Kobe stat wise. He didn't have a drop off. I don't think.
Huge drop off. Huge.
Yeah,
really.
I would say the Kevin Durant Nets. I think they had higher expectations than Kobe in his later years. Because I don't think Kobe.
Absolutely, because the team wasn't very good, because they lost so many key pieces and they just got so bad.
I think player-wise, Kevin Durant is one younger with the injury, but I think the variable wasn't just like what their skill set is and what their outlook is. Kobe had dropped off before the Achilles injury. He was putting everything out there to try to elevate a bad team, but we knew in his prime he couldn't do that. He can't do it the way LeBron can. Sure. So it really didn't matter all that much. Kevin Durant is a guy who, if he can get back to top 3, he is a major factor in how things shake out. Particularly, they're in the East. The East is desolate. Weak. Like, we talked about how bad they were when LeBron was out there. They have less now.
It's really weak.
Everybody's in the West. And if Kevin Durant can be the guy he is and be healthy and not have another injury, like that Nets team, along with Kyrie Irving, they are the Warriors of the East without the competition.
And I'm still waiting for the drama, though. I think they're going to have to hit friction at some point in the year.
But what's the friction? So that's my point is, I think the friction normally, even the Warriors, Kevin Durant's friction with them was that even while winning, Draymond Green is yelling at him. Kyrie's not going to yell at Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's not going to yell at Kyrie. Steve Nash is it's like a modern Phil Jackson type. It's like, I'm not here to revolutionize the day-to-day. I'm even going to let Tex Winter run the offense, but I'm here to be kumbaya. I get along with everybody. This is going to be a happy-go-lucky team. And I think most of the things that set Kyrie off, I don't think are there when you are a 60-plus win team. There might be stretches, maybe, but I think even then, I think the one thing, and like I said, it was if they get what they want. If you bring in a third guy, it is now about ball distribution. It's who's taking shots. Where is usage going? But when it's just two guys and the rest of the team is good around them, you're not going to have it. It's going to look a lot more like what the Lakers did last year around LeBron and Anthony Davis. There's not an issue with, I'm not getting my touches, Kevin Durant's going to get it when he needs to. Kyrie's going to get it when they need to. And it's going to be enough to beat good teams. There's not going to be that frustration. Maybe when you get to playoffs, there might be. But even then, I think it would take a really bad stretch to get Kyrie into that point, because Kevin Durant's just not aggressive in that way. The only thing I've ever seen Kevin Durant turn on is he didn't really like playing with Russell Westbrook as high strong as he was. I don't know why he thought it would be better with Draymond Green.
Likes playing with Westbrook. Nobody. We're going to see that in D.C. You talk about disaster.
That's not true. Everybody has loved playing with Russell Westbrook. Analytics guys point out that it's not helpful to win basketball games, but Kevin Durant is about the only guy, and he didn't actually say it outright, but everybody else says they love playing with Russell Westbrook.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in the nation's capital.
I'm not saying he's going to help them. I'm just saying, don't pretend like he's this bad teammate or a guy that people don't like playing with because of his selfishness. Like, guys hate playing with James Harden more than they hate playing with
why do you think he's bounced around now? This is his fourth team?
He's bounced around because analytics tell you it's not going to win you games. That's a GM deciding it. That's not players deciding get Westbrook out of here. The only guys who didn't like playing with him were actually the other guys he played with in Oklahoma City, Kevin Durant and James Harden. Everybody else loves him.
I don't know. Well, I don't know. The Lakers went through, their own adversity last year when you talk about AD and LeBron, and it worked that AD and LeBron were friends enough that when the Lakers go on like a 4-game losing streak,
there was no adversity. I don't think with the Lakers.
I think that the adversity was COVID, and it hit everybody.
They were penciled in as the favorite in my mind beginning of the year. I knew they were going to win it all, and that's even before the tragic news about Kobe.
Yeah, and so that again is a lot of things to overcome, and I don't know what the equivalent would be for Brooklyn, aside from another like season shutdown and
team chemistry.
Yeah,
they got pretty good chemistry already. Like
right now, but let's see them maybe if they're in a tight spot.
Generally speaking, if you play well, you gain chemistry, and if you can start out the season and already have it.
Right.
You're in pretty good shape. Like, that's a good sign that everybody plays well together. And they have guys who they just like winning. So when you put in guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie, they're not upset that they're losing touches. And luckily, Kevin Durant and Kyrie are guys, they do pass the ball. Like, they love to be high usage guys, but it's not like they're the James Harden style where so often they're getting themselves in a position where it's like, I'm going to have to play ISO. That's the entire possession. Like, they're constantly moving the ball around, and they just happen to be so good. They often get themselves open, and they take the shot because that's the best shot, given it's those two guys. Honestly, all the stuff for Kyrie is off the court, and I don't think that comes from any random, like, it's not a losing streak. It's not whatever else. If Kyrie just has a bad day, but I think they're built, they kind of know. Like, they knew what they had with Kyrie, and they are going to cater to him as much as possible. So I think most of the battles, Kyrie just loves to fight with people. He's just going to fight with the media, and all the team's going to back him through the whole time. I don't imagine like there's going to be a situation where Kyrie is the one who breaks it down. I guess if you're going like existential, like loving where you're at, and that's why Kyrie's like, I don't love what's happening in Cleveland, even though we won a championship. Boston picked me, and I have all these great players around me. I just don't like it here. Like, whatever the things are that's making Kyrie look for something else, maybe that just happens, but I don't think it comes from anything on the basketball court, and I don't think it comes from how he plays with his teammates. I think most of the negatives for Kyrie, the Nets are ready to absorb. They've built themselves to absorb it. And the only way it happens is, I don't know, if Kevin Durant just starts to hate him for whatever reason. But it seems like Kevin Durant, he's just as likely to say the dumb things that I hate when I hear Kyrie say, but Kevin Durant just doesn't talk as much as Kyrie does. That's the biggest difference. I think they're going to get along like gangbusters.
Well, we'll definitely see what happens. But like I said earlier, I think right now the best team to start out is definitely the Nets. I mean, after seeing just the first 2 games, they blew out Golden State, who I thought they were going to bounce back and they were going to start out hot with Klay being back. But of course, with no Klay Thompson, it's not going to happen. But we'll see if the hot streak keeps up in Brooklyn.
Yeah, my guess would be Lakers are going to very quickly be right there, neck and neck with the
Absolutely.
Nets. Obviously, the Bucks will start to figure things out because you're already seeing a huge upgrade of Drew Holiday over what Eric Bledsoe was doing for him, and that's no offense to Eric Bledsoe. It's just that's the level Drew Holiday is playing at right now. I can only imagine how good the Bucks would have been if the Bogdanovich trade actually went through and he didn't end up going to the Hawks after all those tampering issues. But Bucks should still be good. Lakers are the tough one because they're already playing really well. They came out of the gate looking good, despite they flipped over half their team, with guys I think are better players. So it's when we're talking about chemistry, I'm not worried about the Brooklyn chemistry. I'm wondering where the Lakers chemistry goes and how long it takes when it comes together, because I think theoretically that's a better team than you just won a championship with.
Yeah,
you just got to get used to playing with those guys playing and finding their role around LeBron and Anthony Davis.
I think there's less regular season stress on the Lakers than, say, the Nets, though. if one of them were like, if the Lakers end up as like a 4 seed, I don't think they're even sweating it still. It's like once they're in the playoffs.
No, they'll still make a run if they're a 4.
Yeah, whereas if the Nets fall, to like the 4th seed, then I think we'd have more questions of like, oh, are they, as good as we were expecting them?
Well, that's just because we've already seen the Lakers, capture it all, and they go through a run, and we saw them do it. I mean, this is the first go around we're seeing of Kyrie with KD. Can we finally see the Nets, become a real legit team? I'm trying to remember what I was going to say now about the Lakers. Oh yeah, they blew out the Spurs last night, and how about that female assistant becoming the first to be active head coach when Popovich got tossed out last night? That was pretty cool.
Becky Hammond making history, and my favorite part was ESPN. The first tweet I saw was like, is believed to be the first female head coach in NBA history to step in for a game. And I was just like, that's a stat you should just have. Like, I get where some of the time you just want to be careful because how far do you need to go in the history bank? Like, we should know that story. If there was somebody before Becky Hammond, you should have already told us that damn story. But the idea, it's like, believed to be. Like, no, she's the first one. There weren't even
blow off some scrolls, got some dust. You gotta look at, in the 50s, there might have been a female coach. There was a lot of,
And I've seen that, like, one of the ones locally in Lawrence, like, I think it was I forget the position. It was some elected position. Maybe it was like the police chief being the first like black police chief, but they were like, we have to look back because it could have been one that was part of it, like back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So there was like that. It's like, okay, I'll give you the modifier is necessary for an NBA that they know the history of and that you've already made the biggest deal about her being the first female assistant coach. Like, what would have been the other situation where a woman stepped in as the head coach? Like, it wouldn't have came up before now, but they're like, we have to be careful, guys. Who knows if we don't have all the information. We don't have to Google it. So
she's the man type situation.
Hey, they had to cover their asses. So they believed. They were the only one. Everybody else just said what it was. She was the first one to step in and coach an NBA team. I think it's already pretty clear that there's a problem if Becky Hammond is not an NBA head coach sometime in the next few years. When you think of all the retreading of basketball coaches, the idea that you're just going to keep hiring some guys who have already not worked elsewhere and not give her a chance sometime soon, I think would be ridiculous. So hopefully that happens. I'm not saying they have to rush it, but it would be good to see Becky Hammond get some looks because she's done a pretty damn good job being an assistant for the Spurs. So it was fun to see her get out there. And I love the photo of her like with the mask, just talking to these like 6'10" guys, just like pointing at them, and they're like completely intent on what she's saying. She commands that group of behemoths, and I'd love to see what she's capable of doing, being a head coach sometime in the near future.
Absolutely. Well,
any other NBA topics? It looks like Nick's jumping off, so that's it. He's calling it quits. He's the only one smart enough to get us on out of here. That's all we have for this episode of Too Many Points on the Tell Me More podcast. Try to be back next week. I started to get some rest, so maybe now we can go back to 2 a week, particularly going into the NFL playoffs. But that's all we have for you guys today. Thanks for tuning in to Too Many Points on the Tell Me More podcast. Later, folks.
See you next year.